Welcome to the March 8th, 2021 meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission. The Planning Commission advises the County Board on matters pertaining to planning and development in our community. This is the first of two evenings scheduled for our public hearings. Tonight, we will be hearing the request to advertise the proposed amendment to the zoning fee schedule, amendments to the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance, Article 11.2, the Columbia Pike Neighborhood Form-Based Code District, to reinstate the transfer of development rights multipliers, some committee reports, and other administrative matters. We also have a resolution of the commission to consider. At our Wednesday, March 10th meeting, we will hear a number of items related to the recommendation for the site plan for the courthouse landmark block located at 2050 Wilson Boulevard. If you're here for that item, note that it will not be discussed tonight. Now, there's some items that I'm required to share now on how we're going to be doing this tonight. For the safety of our staff and residents, we're holding this meeting virtually, as we did for our meeting since last March. Welcome to our commissioners, county staff, applicants, and community members who are all joining us remotely. We're legally authorized to hold this virtual meeting based on the governor's executive orders, legislation adopted by the Virginia General Assembly, and the County Board's Continuity of Operations Ordinance that was adopted in March of 2020. Before we begin, I have a few specifics to orient everyone to our virtual environment. Tonight's meeting is available as a broadcast with closed captioning on Comcast Xfinity channels 25 and 1085, Verizon Fios channels 39 and 40, and the county's website. Audio of tonight's meeting is available via phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity during the meeting, please reconnect to us by phone. You can use the number provided to the team's invite, which is 347-973-6905, with a conference ID number of 768-557-69#. And registered speakers have received Ms. Johnson's telephone numbers in their speaker registration confirmation. For other presenters and speakers joining us through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon. Please turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that's located in your meeting's command bar. The moderator, does not have the ability to unmute you. If you're dialing in by phone, press *6 to unmute. Commissioners, if you wish to be recognized to speak, as always, please use your hand raise function or turn on your video and unmute your microphone to signal your interest, and I'll call upon you in order. For public speakers, you will be called upon by the clerk at an assigned time. Pre-registration to speak at tonight's meeting was required. We're not able to accommodate additional speakers. Now, the public comments will take place within the same time frames as we would provide if we were at an in-person meeting. Speakers will have 3 minutes to comment as individuals and 5 minutes to speak if you're representing an organization. A speaking timer will be displayed on the screen by the clerk. If you're dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible warning when 30 seconds are remaining. You will then be muted when your time has concluded. The meeting chat is active for presenters or commissioners who need technical assistance only. Do not use the meeting for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All the public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded, it is being recorded, and posted to the county website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. Now, for our first matter tonight will be a resolution of the commission. Madam Clerk, can you please put that resolution up on the screen for us? Very good. Thank you much. First, I will read this I will move that the Planning Commission adopt the following resolution that I will be reading by unanimous consent. This is a resolution of the Arlington County Planning Commission. Whereas Robert Duffy has served Arlington County, Virginia as Planning Director in the Department of Community Planning, Housing and Development for the past 8 years, and whereas Mr. Duffy is retiring from that position effective March 19, 2021, and whereas Mr. Duffy brought his deep planning knowledge and respected experience to the multifaceted planning issues facing the county, and whereas Mr. Duffy led Arlington County's planning process as the county faced enormous development demands while shifting from a suburban to an urban landscape and demography, and whereas Mr. Duffy promoted community voice in planning processes and implemented innovative approaches to community and stakeholder engagement during unprecedented pandemic circumstances, and whereas Mr. Duffy's temperament and commitment to share his expertise with others work to reduce barriers to meaningful participation in planning processes, and whereas Mr. Duffy advanced the concept and practice of design sustainability by amplifying human, social, economic, and environmental considerations, and whereas Mr. Duffy has been recognized for his work by the American Planning Association, including his induction into the American Institute of Certified Planners College of Fellows, and whereas Mr. Duffy and the county, through his leadership, have received numerous accolades for the county's planning, and whereas Mr. Duffy has served in his position with distinction throughout his tenure and with good humor, transparency, and leadership, therefore, be it resolved that the Arlington County Planning Commission honors Mr. Duffy and thanks him for his work for the county and for his consistently good advice, guidance, and friendship to the Planning Commission. So ordered. I now open the floor to my fellow commissioners. If any of you have any further comments or things you'd like to say.
Mr. Chairman, I think you did move that by unanimous consent. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So I think you just need to at least dispense with that.
Yes, I'm asking it to be moved by unanimous consent. And hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Again, if anybody has anything further they would like to add or comment, now's the time to do so. Yes, Commissioner Hughes, followed by Commissioner Gearing.
I will be brief, but I do think that I want to just say thank you to Bob, and we will be missed. For many of us, what we don't know is that some of us have a great deal of planning experience. Commissioner Lantomi, Commissioner Gearing, Commissioner Morton, and a background in this, but some of us come with just an open mind and a willing heart. And so for those of us like myself, Mr. Duffy and his staff have been amazing. And I will still remember the first day when Mr. Duffy introduced himself to me. So thank you, Bob, and good luck.
Thank you. Commissioner Gearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to say thank you to Bob. Bob, I wish I could see you. I want to thank you for your leadership and mentorship to the Planning Commission. And to me in particular, Commissioner Hughes is right. Some of us come with experience, but every jurisdiction is different. And it's hard to, this was a challenging time. There's a lot going on in Arlington County. We have a lot of moving pieces. We have a very engaged constituency. And you have been such a professional. You've been so kind and patient with all of us and so transparent. I think you're one of the reasons that people feel like they can take on this role and that we all do such a good job, and you will be very missed. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gearing. Commissioner Bagley.
Yeah, my route to the Planning Commission had a first stop as a civic association president. And the first time that I ever saw Bob he was Mr. Duffy, and he was standing in this meeting room at the Monroe with a bunch of hostile neighbors. I was a civic association officer, but not the president. I had not coordinated that meeting, and I thought to myself, now this guy really is above and beyond, standing there and attempting to explain and listening and walking into a real hostile situation and continuing to reach out to the neighbors. So I always had a good feeling for staff and that because of what I saw that night as very early in my civic association participation. So it's just been an added time, and more recently when you guided us in one of the projects that I've been involved in, and I really appreciate your help, and I too will miss you. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bagley. Commissioner Schroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to commend you, Mr. Duffy, for your service to the county and to the commission as well. It's been a pleasure working with you over the years, and I do appreciate your guidance during my year as chair. So appreciate that. And also the fact that you have gone kind of above the call of duty. I know in the kind of years leading up to the Lee Highway process that we're now undergoing, you spent a number of Saturdays out there walking around with civic association presidents to consider what we could be doing in the future. And so I remember embarking on that even before I was a transportation commissioner. So that was probably 6 years ago or something, 6 or 7 years ago. So I thank you for your service to the county and to the profession of planning. I know you have received accolades, beyond Arlington. So congratulations, and I wish you the best in retirement, Bob. We will certainly miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. Commissioner Siegel.
Hi, Bob. It's so good to see you. My goodness, it's been such a long time. Even a photocopy of yourself. I wanted to align myself with statements of my fellow commissioners and thank you in particular, in general, for your support in the ways that others have experienced, and particularly for your support in writing the Citizens Guide. I don't think I could have produced that without your help. And I also want to tell you that I think your ability to listen to the disparate, conflicting views coming out of the community, in particular, it makes the Arlington way work. If community statements are ignored or undermined, the Arlington way doesn't work, and we pride ourselves on the Arlington way, and I think the commission prides itself on being the sort of voice of the Arlington way. So I just can't thank you enough on my own behalf, and really on behalf of Arlington, if I can be so bold to say so. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. Commissioner Weir. No, I'm sorry, Commissioner Morton, you were next.
Hi, I'll echo the sentiments of my colleagues. And just one thing, a little bit of a different perspective I have on Bob is that he's been so generous in volunteering time and expertise to planning students. Some of you may not know him in that capacity, but probably Commissioner Guerin and I have seen him in a little bit of a different light. And I think that just is such a wonderful way that you will be extending your influence and expertise for many, many years in the future as people go on to contribute to both Arlington and the communities that they go off to in their professional journey. So thank you very much on behalf of the many, many students that you've mentored and encouraged.
Thank you, Commissioner Morton. Commissioner Weir, your turn.
So we have a saying on this commission that everything has to be said, but not everything has to be said by everyone. And so I'll simply, as we do, associate myself with the comments that have been made before. But it has been really a delight working with you, and I wish you the best in whatever comes next.
Thank you, Commissioner Weir. And let me weigh in too. I came late to the planning profession and planning school, and it's been quite both a delight and an education to see how an experienced planning professional applies the principles that we've learned to real life, and the messy but vital balancing and listening to all the stakeholders involved in a community to make something happen and to have good things happen is always amazing to see how it occurs. But it does require talent and knowledge, and you brought those to your position and to the county. I am very grateful that I had 4 years to work on the Planning Commission under your tenure. It's been a wonderful learning experience, just a wonderful experience all around. Thank you for your time, your expertise, and your support of the Planning Commission. So again, thank you and best wishes to whatever your next act is.
Well, Jim and members of the Planning Commission, thank you so much for your kind words. I've truly been fortunate to work with all of you and the planning commissioners that have come before you since 2012. You have all accomplished so much during your tenure as appointed planning commissioners, and as a planning director who's worked in a number of jurisdictions and also along the way served as the planning commissioner in 2 communities. You have one of the most challenging and most rewarding jobs that anyone can have. So again, thank you for your comments. And I have to say that none of us can achieve what we have in Arlington without the outstanding work of our staff. I've really been blessed to have worked with what I believe is one of the most professional and committed planning staffs in the region, if not in the country, in many ways. They make a difference for us in so many ways. And again, I just couldn't do my work, and certainly the Planning Commission benefits from their work in so many ways as well. It's so important to have this working relationship and trust and partnership and collaboration with the Commission. While sometimes we might not fully agree on every issue, but if you look at the record, I think the Commission and staff have done some just exceptional things that will shape Arlington and make a difference for many years to come. Looking ahead, well, I guess looking backwards first, looking at this past year, how challenging has it been for all of us? But looking ahead to really the next year or so are going to be equally as challenging in many different ways. And it's going to be imperative that the Planning Commission and staff continue to work together. It's going to be an interesting period of transition as we finally come out of this period of COVID-19. How we deal with the issues of equity and inclusion in Arlington are going to be so important. We have done some excellent work together in terms of virtual engagement, and I think we'll need to find ways to continue that in some productive ways so that we can continue to expand our planning work with the community in many different forms. There will be 3 major efforts that Arlington will have to pursue and continue work on over the next several years. And as you all know, we've been working very closely with the housing staff and the community on Housing Arlington. It will continue to be a priority for us, and certainly a major priority for the next planning director as he or she takes over our work program. Equally as important is going to be the issue of what I'll call economic recovery and resiliency. How we work with small businesses, how we prepare the reuse and adaptive opportunities for many of our older office buildings is going to be a challenge as well. And the third area that I think is going to be so important and has to be married with all those other two is what I'll just call Biophilic Arlington. How we address climate change, how we deal with sustainability. The work that staff and the community will be doing in the months to come to address the county board's commitment to the biophilic network is going to be equally as important. Our economy, our community, our neighborhoods are going to rely on the work that we bring forward that addresses everything from stormwater to tree canopy to, again, a livable Arlington. So Biophilic Arlington will continue to be important, and I know many of the planning commissioners are very active on that front. And again, it's also going to be very important. Just to close on one note, all of you know that for decades, Arlington has been recognized regionally and nationally for its commitment to transit-oriented development, our sector plans, our general land use plan. And we have talked over the past several years about the future of those sector plans. While this is going to be a challenging period, certainly for staff and the commission and the community as we make this transition from the pandemic, we should begin to think about the future of what a sector plan is, how it can address many of these issues that deal with equity, inclusion, biophilia, resiliency, recovery, housing. Those issues weren't at the forefront of many of our previous planning efforts, and they need to be welded together into what could be a new approach to planning in Arlington. I've had these discussions with our staff, but it really will be imperative that the planning commissioner, again, working with staff, begins to advance some work on this over the next 2 years. I know that'll be a priority for many of you. And again, I'll look forward to seeing the progress that Arlington makes in that front. So let me just say this again. Thank you for your confidence. Thank you for your trust, your ability to work in partnership. And together, we've really made a difference for Arlington. And again, there's a great path forward as we transition from COVID. So I'll be watching the work in Arlington. I'll be in the region for many years to come. And again, thank you for the opportunity to serve you all.
Thank you, Bob. You will be missed. Well, we do have a meeting tonight that we have to continue on with. So, Madam Clerk, can you call the first item?
I most certainly can. Our first item for the evening is the proposed amendment to the zoning fee schedules. We have our zoning staff, Aaron Shura, to present this item this evening.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Shura. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron Shura. I'm the acting administrative services supervisor for the zoning division. And I have, which I'm going to attach, I'm going to put in the meeting chat, a request to authorize advisement of public hearings by the Planning Commission and the County Board to consider a proposed amendment to the fee schedule to provide fees for electrical, plumbing, zoning verification permits, revisions to existing building permits for special exceptions and minor formatting modifications. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat box right now so everyone can take a look at it. Actually, I'm going to do something better. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So we're authorizing the advertisement of public hearings at this meeting tonight in the county board on April 8th, 2021, to consider this proposed amendment to the zoning fee schedule to provide fees for electrical, plumbing, and zoning verification permits and revisions to existing building permits for special exceptions. And I have down here of the fees that we'd like to do. The electrical permit fee would be $59. The plumbing permit fee would be $59. The revisions to approved permits for modifications to existing buildings for special exception projects would also be $59. And the zoning verification permit would be $120. And just to give everyone a little bit of background, the zoning division, as well as the other agencies and CPHD, operate under the enterprise fund. We don't get anything from actual tax revenue. We have to generate these fees in order to, maintain our costs and keep up with operations. So that's what we're proposing to the Planning Commission tonight, is to request to authorize the county board to hear us out and hopefully approve these fee changes rather. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and try to drop that in the box again. Jim, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
You shouldn't be using the chat box for anything substantive.
Okay.
This is being recorded, so what is on the screen will be able to be seen by others.
Okay, good. All right, let me just go ahead and reshare that. And I'd just like to note the fiscal impact. If these 4 fee changes are approved by the Planning Commission as well as the board, it'll generate approximately $61,820 in new revenue for the CPHD Development Fund. And this additional revenue has been included in the county manager's FY 2022 budget.
Okay, do you have anything further?
No, nothing further. I'm here tonight. My purpose here tonight is to see if the planning commissioners have any questions for me.
Before we get to that, Madam Clerk, do we have any public commenters?
No, we do not on this item.
Okay, and are there commissions here that intend to make some comments? Okay, hearing none, it now is with the commission. And as Mr. Schur asked, he's here. Okay, Commissioner Sarli first, and then Commissioner Steinberger.
So, good evening, everyone. I just had a quick question. And on your spreadsheet, you had the new cost, but you didn't have the prior cost. So I was just wondering what the delta was and what the impact is.
Which fee in particular?
So the proposed new fees. So, like for instance, the electrical permit. What was the prior fee cost, and what is the delta? So, what are we approving? Where are we coming from?
Sure. The prior cost, I'll just say right down here, the zoning does not have a fee for like electrical permits. A review fee exists for mechanical permits, but as you'll see right here, there are no current fees for the staff time and resources associated with the review of an electrical or plumbing permit.
Great. That's great to hear. Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Oh, so my turn?
Yeah, you're on. I can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, I thought Commissioner Sarli might have a follow-up question. Thank you for that presentation. Really just kind of maybe this is a kind of a clarification or for my own sort of personal knowledge. Could you provide an example of a zoning verification permit? I struggled a little bit to come up with the appropriate scenario when that would apply. And if you could just give an example, that would help me.
Sure. Right now we have zoning. There's two different kinds of letters that zoning sends out. One is a compliance letter, which basically says a property is zoned R6 and that, this is what's allowed on it. A zoning determination is, it's basically, it requires a specific interpretation, for what you want to do. And the zoning verification letter, it's where there's a little bit more time and research that's required, but it doesn't require the specific determination that a zoning determination would.
Okay, so there's work and effort to it, but it's not the same level as if you're going for a zoning determination.
Right. It's kind of the middle ground between a zoning compliance letter and a zoning determination. That's what the zoning verification letter is. Okay,
and a zoning compliance letter still does not have a fee?
No, the zoning compliance letter still has a fee.
It does. And what is the fee for that?
I'm not sure the fee right off the top of my head, but I could get back to you on that one.
Okay, I would appreciate that, just to have a sense of what the stratification is there. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger. Do we have any other questions from commissioners? Seeing none, I think we're ready for a motion. Is anybody willing to do that here for this for the RTA? For this item?
I can do it, Chair. And tell me. This is Commissioner Patel.
Yes.
So I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board authorize the advertisement of public hearings by the Planning Commission on March 8th, 2021, and the County Board on April 8th. I don't know if we need the public hearings and. Should I be including this Planning Commission on March 8th part as well? I'm sorry that I need to ask for clarification on this. Okay, thank you. Authorize the advertisement of public hearings by the Planning Commission on March 8th, 2021 and the County Board on April 8th, 2021 to consider a proposed amendment to the zoning fee schedule to provide fees for electrical, plumbing, and zoning verification permits and revisions to the existing building permits for special exceptions.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
And that was Commissioner Hughes?
Yep.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I will move ahead and take the vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I will vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Scherer.
Thank you, commissioners.
And Madam Clerk, can you call the second item?
Item number 2 is the NFBC-11. That is the amendments to the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance, Article 11.2 for the form-based code, Columbia Pike neighborhoods. We have several planning staff to present this, but Melissa Danowski will be starting this presentation off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Danowski. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I'm Melissa Danowski. I'm with the Housing Division, and I'll be presenting on the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code Transfer of Development Rights Multipliers Proposed Amendment. Next slide. So first, I would like to refresh everyone's memory on how TDR, Transfer of Development Rights, was envisioned to be implemented in the Neighborhoods Area Plan, which was adopted by the County Board in 2012. The Neighborhoods Area Plan envisioned TDR as a tool that could help preserve the buildings and affordability at the Barcroft and Fillmore Gardens conservation areas. And these conservation areas are comprised solely of portions of the Barcroft and Fillmore apartment complexes and include about 1,540 total market rate affordable units, or MARCs. The units within these conservation areas are significant and represent almost a quarter of the county's total goal for preserving the 6,200 market rate affordable units that were existing at the time of plan adoption. And TDR, for the purposes of affordable housing preservation, could allow a receiving site undertaking a Columbia Pike use permit or a site plan process elsewhere in the county to obtain additional density for their development from these conservation areas or sending sites. In exchange for the density, the sending site, or the Barcroft or Fillmore Gardens apartment communities, would convert the associated number of MARCs into committed affordable housing units, or CAFs, through renovation and by income and rent restricting the units for 30 years. And the adopted neighborhoods area plan did contemplate 3 to 4 times as many units would be needed to be transferred to preserve the affordability of one unit. And the multipliers are intended to help offset renovation costs and rent subsidies, and are in recognition additional value may be needed to preserve units in place and renovate. Next slide. And this is a map of the location of the Columbia Pike receiving and sending sites. The areas in blue are the sending site conservation areas, so the Barcroft and Fillmore Garden apartment communities. The areas in red and yellow are the potential receiving sites along Columbia Pike. Potential receiving sites in the rest of the county would include those sites being redeveloped under a site plan process and that would choose to utilize TDR to receive additional density for their projects. Next slide. The County Board adopted a multiplier in the Neighborhood Form-Based Code that allows 3 times the units to be transferred to a Columbia Pike receiving site for every 1 unit preserved at the Barcroft or Fillmore conservation areas. And 2 times the units could be transferred to a receiving site elsewhere in the county for every 1 unit preserved at the Barcroft or Fillmore sending sites. And note that the receiving site units can and most likely will be market rate. The affordability is preserved at the Barcroft and Fillmore sites. So the units that are preserved at Barcroft or Fillmore would be converted from MARCs to committed affordable units. Next slide. Because TDR was relatively untested in regards to being used for committed affordable housing, and there was an initial concern that the tool might be overutilized, a sunset period was initially created to ensure the county monitored the tool within a conservative time frame. And the sunset period was later extended to December 31st, 2020. Next. And this is an example of how TDR would work. The example assumes a receiving site in Columbia Pike needs bonus height, translating into 30 units for their development. The receiving site owner would negotiate an agreement with the sending site owner for the purchase of their density. In exchange, 10 units must be committed affordable at the sending site, because for every 1 unit preserved at the sending site, 3 units can be sent to a Columbia Pike receiving site. And the receiving site developer would then enter the public process and obtain use permit approval. Concurrently, the sending site enters the public process and obtains use permit approval. The density would be certified concurrently with the approvals. Next. If the receiving site is located outside of Columbia Pike or elsewhere in the county, then 15 units would need to be committed affordable at the sending site to send 30 units to the receiving site. This is because for every 1 unit preserved at the sending site, 2 units could be sent to a receiving site if located elsewhere in the county. And the receiving and sending sites would then obtain site plan or use permit approval, and the density would be certified. Next slide. And since adoption of the Neighborhood Form-Based Code, TDR has not been used at Barcroft or Fillmore Gardens apartments. Through recent meetings with the Barcroft and Fillmore property owners, staff learned that TDR is not a likely tool for them due to the affordability term and restrictions that would be placed on their unit. In other words, they would not want to sell their density to another developer because they don't want the 30-year income and rent restrictions that would be placed upon their units due to the transfer. And but although TDR has not been used to date to preserve conservation area units, staff recommends reinstating the multipliers to ensure their availability as a potential preservation tool can remain into the future. And staff would need to reinstate rather than extend the multipliers as they technically expired December 31st. So lastly, staff recommends the multipliers apply to the conservation properties indefinitely. We would recommend revisiting the multipliers if and when there's a change in county policy or the Columbia Pike development trends that would warrant an amendment. Next slide. In terms of public process, staff has met with the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group in December and provided an informational overview to the Housing Commission January 14th. Staff also met with ZOCO on January 19th, and the request to advertise this amendment was approved at the February County Board meeting. And so staff will return to the Housing Commission for final consideration at their March meeting later this week, followed by the County Board hearing. Next slide. So in conclusion, staff recommends adopting the attached ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance Article 11.2, Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code District, Appendix B, Section 204D, Transfer of Development Rights, to reinstate the TDR multipliers available to the two conservation area properties along the Columbia Pike corridor, and which sunset on December 31st, 2020. So thank you. That concludes the staff presentation and recommendation to reinstate the multipliers, and happy to respond to any questions or comments from the group. And I also want to mention that Matt Matusek, the Planning Division, is also here to help answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Danowski. We appreciate the presentation. Are there any public comments for this, Madam Clerk?
Not this evening.
Thank you. Are there any commissions that would like to comment that are in attendance? Hearing none, Commissioner Patel, do you have a report from the zoning committee?
Thank you. So this matter did come before the zoning committee, and I appreciate my colleagues who were able to attend that meeting. I think this matter was pretty straightforward as presented by staff at the meeting as well as tonight. And feedback with regard to questions or concerns regarding the specific item. I do have one area of a potential area for discussion. If I may, at this time, I think one of the areas for potential discussion could be, based on the presentation, the necessity for this to happen and agility of this process for future use.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Patel. It is now before the commission.
Thank you.
Does anybody have other topics that they would like to cover on this? Commissioner Steinberger?
My comment is actually with regards to the topic that Commissioner Patel raised. I just was really quick on the trigger finger.
Okay. Does anybody have any other items that they'd like to add to the discussion list? Okay, seeing none, Commissioner Steinberger, it's all yours right now.
Thank you. So I agree with Commissioner Patel. I thought this issue was presented in a very straightforward manner, and I appreciate staff's presentation because it laid out a topic that I was not otherwise terribly familiar with in a very clear manner, and I was able to understand the circumstances well. So thank you. My question really is, I saw it repeated, and I understand that property owners in the zones that it would be sending the density as opposed to receiving the density have not to this point been interested in sending density. And it doesn't sound like any of those owners are particularly inclined to start sending density. So I guess I understand the idea that maybe owners in the future would. That's fine. I don't have a concern with sort of not having a sunset provision on the TDRs, the TDR multiplier. I understand all of that. I don't think a sunset would be necessary given the circumstances, but I guess if the current plan is not being utilized and we're not getting any traction on this, what else could we look at with TDRs that might get us to the point where we could actually see utilization of this? Because renewing a project, a program that's not getting used on the idea that maybe other owners in the future would use it seems very sort of uncertain. And I struggle with that a little bit. If it's in your, so I guess the question aspect of it is, with regards to the current owners of these properties that will be sending density, is it the 30-year term that really is the holdup with regards to kind of having to commit to CAF units for 30 years? Is it the multiplier? Is it something else? Like, what can we do? And can we change any of those things so that we might be able to really make this a more enticing option for folks? Because we've had it on the books for a while now and no one's using it. The one on the one hand that says, okay, well, you don't really need a sunset because we don't really, because of fear that it would be too used or wouldn't, operate well. But on the other side, it's why are we keeping it going if no one's using it? So I kind of see it both ways, and I would appreciate thoughts from staff on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I can respond to that. So transfer of development, it is a very complicated tool, and there hasn't been interest to date from the current owners. The reason that staff would like to proceed with this amendment is simply to keep it on the books as a potential tool and to be ready if by chance, they change their minds, which I understand is probably unlikely, or it does transfer under new ownerships. It's really just to kind of keep it as a tool that we could use. But to your point, that doesn't mean that that's the only tool that we're looking at. It doesn't mean this amendment doesn't preclude staff from looking at other tools to help try and figure out how we can preserve affordability at Barcroft and Fillmore Gardens. We do have the Housing Arlington initiative and are continually looking at different tools to help preserve affordability, probably first and foremost financial tools to help us preserve Barcroft and Fillmore. And I don't have a lot more detail related to that, but I just want to mention that this is certainly not the only tool we would look at to help preserve Barcroft and Fillmore, but it is something that we would kind of like to keep as viable and current. So, if anything does change, that we would be ready, and TDR could be a viable tool.
I guess specifically.
Yeah, Mr. Matuzik, you have something you want to add to that?
Hey, good evening. Matt Matuzik with the Planning Division. I would like to just reiterate that, part of what was approved back in 2012 with the Neighborhoods Area Plan and later on with the Neighborhoods Form-Based Code, where these TDR multipliers apply, was really a long-term strategy that was really keeping its eye on the forecast of year 2040. So at the time it was a 30-year plan, and it really was trying to set in stone tools that at some point, given market conditions, ownership structures, and other variables that obviously are at play here, might become enticing to multiple property owners so that something like this could actually take place. We've only had, I think, less than 10 years of existence with the TDR multipliers, and therefore I think not enough time may have gone by to, I think, fully confirm that they're not working. They just haven't worked yet. So I think making sure that we have all the potential tools at our disposal, knowing that this is a long-term effort, I think is really critical until something better is either developed or suggested, at which point, as Melissa mentioned, we would be certainly willing to update the multipliers as they are today.
Thank you, Mr. Matuzik. Commissioner Steinberger, you had something to follow up?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I understand. I think that there's a lot of sense to having multiple tools in your tool belt and kind of seeing what's useful if and when. And I appreciate that 10 years or really less than 10 years in the life of county development is not an eternity, and that we routinely approve development plans for things that aren't going to see the light of day for 5 years or more. I guess where I struggle is that if we're consistently, or if we were to be consistently hearing that the 30-year commitment is the piece of the holdup, should we be looking not just at what the multiplier is, but maybe should we be looking to have these affordable units committed for a period of time less than 30 years? Do we have that as an ability? Could it be 25 years? Could it be 20? And I wanted to know if that's another tool we can be using here, if that's the feedback we're getting from owners.
if I could just follow up on that, I think that's a very good point. But, you know, in our conversations with the current property owners, we did ask, well, what if it was 20 years? What if it were 10 years? What if it were 5 years? Mm-hmm. And that really didn't change their answer, that it really is those affordability restrictions. They just don't want to place those on their units. So, yes, I think TDR may be, you know, difficult to use for the current property owners. But again, that doesn't mean we're not looking at maybe other options, you know, in addition to helping or to proposing this amendment for TDR, there, you know, could be other tools that we will continue to look at through Housing Arlington. Separate.
Thank you. That was a very comprehensive response, and I appreciate that you've asked owners about those other factors and what might be the appropriate levers to push. So thank you. That was great.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger. Commissioner Hughes, you're next, and then followed by Commissioner Siegel.
Thanks, Commissioner Lantomi. And I kind of wanted to follow up to Commissioner Steinberger's comments, because I wanted her to know that, A, what she expressed was expressed by the AUG members as well, and myself. And I want to just share publicly how I came to an understanding that I think that this is a good thing to continue forward. I think that laying it out in the zoning ordinance and having these sites identified helps emphasize their desire of the county in some way to preserve the affordability there. And maybe this tool is not the best one at the moment, but it at least leaves that as a legacy artifact in the regulation to show our intent and desire and the commitment we had at the time and continue to have to preserve the affordability there. So that's where I came to, Commissioner Steinberger, on it. But I will say that your comments are absolutely incredibly the same as every one of the members that I heard on this or spoke to on this. And it is a question of, okay, so it appears that we have a tool that's unlikely to be used. Why keep it around is the bottom line. And that's how I came to a support on it. On a follow-up to it, Commissioner Steinberger, and I think the ownership structures here are very interesting. I encourage anyone who's interested, you can reach out to me. I'll explain more. But also, as a note for us in our other planning tools, and as we think about things, your comment about the affordability timelines and other things, a recent change in the Senate is to refer to the Senate Banking Committee, not only as the Senate Banking Committee, but the Senate Banking and Housing Committee, because a lot of things that people don't realize about people's choices with regard to affordable housing and other tools comes about through the bankers, the people at the end of the string who give you the other people's money. So, Commissioner Steinberger, great comments. They were shared by many of your other folks out there, and I just wanted to share with you and my fellow commissioners how I came to laissez-faire with it and come to supporting staff's conclusion that this isn't a harm function. They can be nimble and agile if necessary in the future if dynamics change, but leaving it in there as an artifact is kind of relevant in the sense of preserving that memory. And thank you, Commissioner Lantomi.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Siegel, you're up now.
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. I just have one question, and I believe, Melissa, you provided this the answer perhaps at the zoning committee, but if you could remind me, the staff withdrew this tool from the toolbox. Can you just remind me when, and was the reason to reevaluate it? Is that right? Can you just give that little history for us?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So I would say that the multiplier it just sunset in the neighborhood form-based code. We didn't do any action to necessarily pull it. It just sunset, and we wanted to be sure and do the appropriate public process before. Reinstating it. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to just extend it, but we are recommending reinstating it. I think in an ideal world, we would have been able to have this item come before you before they had actually expired.
Thank you. I see. Well, that's meaningful. Just my one comment would be, just want to thank Commissioner Hughes for giving us the perspective of the AUG, and that extra reason for maintaining it is that it does raise awareness about these two properties and what the county's a vision and vision for them would be. And this is one way to get there. And this way to get there doesn't would not interfere. There's no opportunity cost. There's no lost other tool that we would forego with this. So I'm pretty comfortable that it's right. It's the right way to go, and be interested in seeing what the housing study new proposals might bolster this in some way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. And Commissioner Schroll, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Danowski, just maybe a couple quick questions. Thank you for your presentation tonight. Does anything prevent county staff from going to the board with new multipliers, or the county board kind of on its own motion revising this proposed zoning ordinance language?
I don't think there would be anything necessarily preventing the county board from doing that, but that's not staff's recommendation. And the reason is because it's not really the multipliers that are the issue. And the property owners told us as much. It's more the income and rent restrictions for 30 years.
Right, it's the 30-year piece, right? Yeah, which the staff report clearly outlines. I just wanted to, I knew that there was some question about the sunset from some folks as well, and about whether that should be revisited. So I just wanted to clarify, I guess, that while that's, as has been stated this evening by you and others, that the multipliers are not the issue. This is really just returning a previous policy to the books, correct, Ms. Danowski? And then, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that one issue. Thank you, Ms. Danowski, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Schroll. I have one question. You have talked to the donor properties, and they're clearly not interested in participating. But did you ever get any interest by potential acquiring sites that had approached these owners to try to buy them? Do we know whether that even occurred, or whether it's ever been even considered by developers?
So if the question is, do developers ever approach Barcroft or Fillmore to buy the property, we, in a recent conversation with Barcroft, they mentioned that yes, they have been approached, presumably by market rate developers, or have been approached, but they tend to keep that information really tight to their vest. So they, don't really provide a whole lot of information on that. I will say that Fillmore Gardens, the property owners did say that they recently invested in renovations and renovating the units. So take that what you will. I don't know if that is at immediate risk of being sold or not. But we just I know that Barcroft and Fillmore Gardens is something that we continuously look at, as far as county staff, and try and keep tabs on it, and try and think of ways that we can preserve the affordability. And it is, high on our minds, especially in regards to, tools that we look at through Housing Arlington and other things. But yeah, we do know that to date, they have both kind of operated their apartment units I somewhat as is, for the past probably decades, at least for Barcroft. But it does. Even with this TDR amendment, it will still be important to keep looking at ways to preserve the affordability at these properties.
Right, and I understand that, but it is good to know that there at least is interest on the other side of the equation for this, and that, yes, should conditions change, we can't predict the future. I think it is absolutely appropriate to have it in the toolbox, especially that there, at least we have indication there is interest in the development community to purchase these. Even if someone isn't right now willing to sell. So thank you very much for your answer. Is there anyone else who needs to talk? Commissioner Siegel, your hand is still up. Is that just left over? Okay, not hearing anybody else. I think we might be ready for motions. Commissioner Patel, do you have one ready?
Yes. I recommend that the Planning Commission, or I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the attached ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance, Article 11.2 CPN-FBC, Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code District Appendix B, Section 204.D, Transfer of Development Right TDR, to reinstate the TDR multipliers available to the two conservation area properties along the Columbia Pike corridor, which sunset on December 31, 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Seeing no hands raised, I will now move on to take the votes. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerin.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli.
Aye.
And I will vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Danowski and Mr. Matuzik. We are done with this item. Okay, we can now move on to the next items. We have, you saw I sent around the staff report on current matters this afternoon, so everyone should have that. We can now hear reports from our various committees. Can we start with the SBRC and Commissioner Morton?
Excuse me, Commissioner Lynn, tell me, we have a staff report this evening?
Oh, we do have a staff report. Okay, I thought we.
Yes, we do.
Sure. Great. And who is going to be giving that? Is that Mr. Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Lentelmi. I'm using my raise hand function here. Yeah, thank you, Matt Pfeiffer with the Planning Division. There was one thing that I did want to mention. This is kind of hot off the press news, but Mr. Duffy didn't get around to mentioning this tonight, but we did want to mention that when Mr. Duffy will be retiring next week, Jen Smith, who is currently the supervisor of the comprehensive planning section, will become acting director. So she will be acting director until that position is permanently filled. So we're all excited for Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. Is there anything else?
That is it.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Ms. Smith. There she is.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lentelmi, and I appreciate and glad to help the Planning Commission and staff during this part of the transition period. So thank you, and just look forward to working together over the next few weeks.
As do I. Thank you. We can now move on to our committee reports, and Commissioner Morton for the SBRC.
Hi, I just have a brief report. I forwarded to everyone this afternoon what's been happening over the last month since we convened last. And the main news items is that next week we have the conclusion of a couple of projects, I believe. The second virtual meeting for the RCA project is a week from tonight on Monday, March 15th. At 7:30 rather than 7. And the second virtual meeting for Crystal Plaza 1 will be a week from this coming Thursday, March 18th. The only thing I neglected to mention is I think the Vernon Street duplex, which did conclude its online engagement, has a TBD. I think maybe there's a chance that there'll be a meeting in the coming month, but we'll wait for Commissioner Patel to weigh in on that later on this month. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Morton. Can we now have Commissioner Schroll for the LRPC?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have a few things that we've been working on. So we had a meeting on the Clarendon sector plan process on March 3rd. And at that meeting, we discussed, the height, massing, tapering, transition in the sector plan as it relates to the proposed four projects. The next meeting will be held on April 14th to discuss open space and transportation in more depth. Commissioner Guerin led a meeting on the Courthouse West parcel, kind of an initial tier 1 review in the special GLUP study on February 16th. We also held a meeting on February 24th to consider staff's progress on the Crystal City Heights map. Another meeting on that will be forthcoming in the spring timeframe to get a further update on the guidance and analysis that staff has put together. And staff continues to work on the Pershing Drive special GLUP study on the drafts after several meetings over last fall, winter, and then into this year. We should have a meeting on that in the spring, kind of early summer timeframe. Commissioner Guerin, I want to pass it to you to see if I've left anything out in the LRPC report as we are co-chairing it this year.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Schroll. No, you've done an excellent job and you haven't omitted anything relevant.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Guerin. So, Mr. Chairman, yield back.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. Commissioner Patel for ZOCO.
Hello. Okay. So ZOCO did not have a meeting in February. That meeting was canceled. The next meeting will be March 16th, and I don't have information about what we will discuss at the March 16th meeting just quite yet, but as soon as I do, I will forward that information to everyone. Oh, and if I may just give an update on the Vernon duplex, that matter will likely go for virtual SPRC on March 29th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Steinberger for PFRC. We've had some action there, I see.
Yes, more or less same report as last time. We're still proceeding with the Shirlington Art Bus facility site. Thank you to Commissioner Peterson, who assisted me splitting the difference last time when I had a conflict for part of the meeting. So we kind of flipped off on sharing that. But proceeding with that. And I believe we have another meeting that I don't think it's been finalized scheduled yet, but I think we're looking at kind of the second half of April, depending on kind of when feedback comes back and such. So we'll full steam ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger. Commissioner Hughes, anything from the Form-Based Code Advisory Committee?
Thanks, Commissioner Lantomi. The AUG is meeting. We are busy at the moment. There is, as some of you may have seen, I'll call it the Fillmore Gardens site closest to the Pike is very close to being filing, which caused a lot of conversation in our last meeting. We also have a major site use amendment. There was a previously approved condo development with Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board impacts that have been approved, so that one may come to us. And we have ground floor uses study going on, which may involve some zoning ordinance changes later on in the year. That's about it for the AUG, but we stay busy at the moment.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. And Commissioner Siegel, an update for the Pentagon City PDSP process.
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. I sent out 2 emails, one a while ago, about a week ago, giving you progress to date. I thought it would be helpful, since we have so very much work to do, and this really could be a sort of new process or a new variation on some of our old, some of our themes, sector plan, GLUP study plus. It might turn out to be a new template that the county might be able to use for other development issues. I would just reference one of the things that Mr. Duffy mentioned about how we do sector plans. So that's something to watch. If we can slide somewhat seamlessly from the conclusion and adoption of the update, PDSP update, into SPRCs, where you've got two developers that are really chomping at the bit, JBG Smith and River House and Rich Furnick. I'll come back to that in a minute. This escapes me. You, of course, know the name of the biggest developer in the world, I believe. They did. They bought Forest City, and who had planned Ballston Quarter. But I did want to just go back very quickly to the process. We saw, and some of you, I think, participated in the community review of 5 different, I would say, central ideas from which to proceed to a more articulated development plan. This really lets us soar up to the 30,000-foot mark to look down on the grand design of these plans. What I think we're going to see, and we're going to see that this week, beginning this week, in a focus group, and then going into another community review, is a proposal for a development plan, which has really been the goal so far of the update. I will brief you on that too. I hope you can join the community update. They're very lively and well attended and very interesting. As you know, there's tons of things going on in the 22202 area. The other thing I sent you was, I just sent it out tonight, was the project page for the update. If you wanted to, at some point, either now or later, look back to see the evolution of the plan. And one more thing I'll mention, Commissioner Gearan and others, David Howell and Carolyn Haynes among them, who have worked and studied very assiduously on issues, biophilic issues, are interacting with the Livability 22202 group to see if principles for the update on biophilia could be used and inserted or embraced by the plan. That's another issue that Bob Duffy raised. So you may see some of those 3 important issues he raised get some sort of treatment in this PDSP update. So I hope you'll stay tuned. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. We also have our the minutes of the February 8th and 10th meetings. Do we have any further changes anybody would like to call attention to for either of those 2 reports of minutes? Okay, if not, can I get a motion for the February 8th minutes?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Schroll.
I would move adoption of the meeting minutes from the February 8th, 2021 meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission.
Do I have a second?
Second, Elizabeth Morton.
Thank you, Commissioner Morton. Let's go ahead with a vote on that. Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel?
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Gearan?
Abstain.
Thank you. Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel. Commissioner Patel, unmute. Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Commissioner Patel.
Aye. I'm sorry. Got a glitch there.
Okay, thank you. Can I get the passes unanimously? Can I get a motion for the February 10th minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission adopts the minutes from the February 10th, 2021 meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission.
Do I have a second?
The second.
Thank you. Commissioner Weir.
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Stroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Abstain.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The minutes have passed unanimously. Very good. Before we go into recess, is there anything else anybody needs to raise tonight? Okay. Items heard this evening are expected to go before the county board on March 20th or 23rd of this, and Planning Commissioner Weir will be representing us at those hearings. Many staff labored to make this virtual meeting work and work well. Thanks to you all, especially thanks to our clerk, Ms. Johnson, our SBRC supervisor, Mr. Pfeiffer, and our technical advisor, Mr. Wood. Thank you all very much for making this work so smoothly. And the commission meeting is now in recess until Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Good night.